Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I'm Random Randy, and in this video, we're going to take a look. I've decided to do another video kind of pertaining to the Civil War, and I just want to make a couple things clear to everybody. I'm not saying that this war did not happen, that people did not die. What I'm saying is the purpose for this war may have been, we'll just say, like twofold. Maybe not just a social transition, but also like a cultural transition as a whole, because it's a very strange thing. And as you'll see here, much like America has interests today, the U.S. has interests today in wars abroad. There seemed to have been a similar thing happening with France and the United States, and because they were on both sides, these supposed French soldiers that I had discussed in the previous video, and we'll take a look into that. But it's really interesting. There's like this whole other dynamic that we're just not really told. There's this interesting and strange kind of Masonic influence with this whole thing. I mean, just looking up Civil War forts, what I find is 33 Civil War forts you can still visit, with the explanation for why masonry earthworks, both earth and masonry works were used for forts in the Civil War. And if you've seen anything about star forts or anything like that, it's interesting, to say the least, that these things were everywhere. And now we're also going to see a little bit later on, and now these are the folks I'm talking about up front here, the Zouave. Okay, and they're on both sides. Not only are they on the side of the North, but they also fight for the South, or the Confederacy. And we're going to see that a little bit here. So thank you, Mr. Price, for writing up this handbook, right, on the Civil War. So, when things have handbooks, and I don't know, it's modern consensus, right? Like that's what's going on here. Pictures, right? We want pictures. Now, the story is that it's the first modern war. What do they mean by modern? You know, um, Technological, right? Modern. Now, modernity, the previous era that we talk about when we talk about the Civil War, when we talk about Tartaria, we talk about the previous modernity. Okay, like here are some things that were happening in this war. The first machine guns were rolled out, and I'm going to do a whole nother thing on some of the technology that you see in the Civil War. Okay, it's going to be a lot, so maybe get used to seeing some Civil War stuff here and again, because it's incredibly interesting, this whole dynamic, who was fighting with and for who. Everything. The first use of railroads is transporting troops and supplies. So, like, all of these things were conveniently in place in order to facilitate this war. You know, the first use of trenches and field fort. Look at this. Everything firsts. Large scale use of landmines, known as subterranean shells. Now, here's a weird conspiratorial thought. What if the landmines were already there and they just had to clear these things? Or they knew they were there and they were using them, or they had been there for a while because this place knew, these peoples knew that they were going to be usurped and taken over. Naval mines and torpedoes. So, in order to have naval mines, like, it means that they're coming. So you go and plant all these things, you know? And if you had like mines, like, what else do you have? Like, that's a pretty significant piece of technology. Same thing with repeating rifles and machine guns, you know? Um, I mean, mobile artillery mounted on rail cars. How freaking crazy would that be? You see massive rail riding cannon, show up. Crazy. First organized medical care. Okay. Now we see medicine like turning into what it is today after this Civil War, right? Did they get their experience during this time? Was it organized? Was this whole thing organized for the purpose of all these experiences? It's a crazy thought, right? But it makes so much sense. And this is where they supposedly say the first reconnaissance from a balloon. Now, I think that they're underselling it. I think that balloons were a major, major part of a lot of these battles and these wars. Okay, first income tax. So look at what's rolling out here. You know what I mean? This is all the stuff that was rolling out, and it takes war, just like today, guys, just like today. It takes war to implement all of these social changes. So that's what's going on here, much like it is today. They've just shifted it a little bit, and they rotate where the war's at around, and they make you want to care about all these different places where they are instigating these battles. Listen, if they have built all this weaponry, they got to use it, guys. And so when you see the weapons industry ramping up and pumping out missiles and everything, they're made to be used. They're going to find ways to use them, much like this probably happened. And then they somehow behind closed doors got to a point where, this analog existence that we talk about serving all these people. Now, these are all the big names, right? When we look at the Civil War, the poet Sidney Lanier, right, joins up. The author of Ben-Hur, General Lew Wallace. You know, when the Marion Rangers organized, Samuel Clemens and or Mark Twain joined as lieutenant. You know, I don't know what Dr. Livingston, I presume, fame is, but Henry Morton Stanley sounds familiar. Andrew Carnegie. You know what I mean? Look at that. Superintendent of Military Railways and Government Telegraph for the North, I'm guessing. See, like Henry Morton Stanley joined the Union and well, yeah, became a Yankee. So I think these were like mixed up. We have some Confederates here. Interesting stuff, dude. Governor of New Mexico. So he was given New Mexico after and was a minister to the Turkish. Why would they need to be a minister to the Turkish? You know what I mean? But then again, what was going on, dude, with the Turks at this time? We're told these are Frenchmen from like North Africa. So it's twisted. It's so twisted. The whole story of this, guys, is just crazy. We got the DuPont dude. You know what I mean? Medal of Honor for gallantry. Like, but did he really though? Or are these just our literary heroes that we're, supposed to look up to? And I'm sure that's going to conflict with a lot of people out there. But, when you start seeing this name, like being responsible for all of these great achievements, and you see zero, like, tree leading up to it, especially when it comes to technology, you see zero, like, learning curve. It's kind of weird. I'm not saying it is everything I'm thinking it is, but it's crazy, right? And we got like, look at this guy, dude. All of these people that later came on to be corporate powerhouses were in like the Union Army. And there was quite a few in the Confederate Army too. And you think these guys didn't all know each other? Dude, these are the people that wound up in history, in the history books. You think these guys don't have an inside joke running on everybody? Uh, it's interesting to say the least. And I know it may be out there for some folks, but you know, this Kit Carson commanded New Mexico Volunteers Union and now think about it, guys. Now we have workers unions. So we have like this weird splitting off of terms to mean different things. Like union before was like the government, and then it became like, I don't know, a different, weirder, smaller governing body, mining unions, etc. I went to this mining museum, guys, near where I live, and looked at all the cool coal and different mining tools, these like crazy drills that have, uh, you know, like mole claws at the end. It's wild. There's some cool stuff. And, finding out about some of these small towns in the middle of America and the way that the railroad ran through and just consumed all of the materials around it. Like a lot of the United States has coal beds, guys. And, a lot of this stuff was like cleared out even before the Civil War times. This railroad has been here for since about the Civil War. It's like the Civil War was the big push to install all of this railway that like now carries all of our freight. So, there's more reasons to this war behind like just an argument. There's a lot of like financial reasons. A lot. Like, look at this. It's crazy, dude. 68 forts defending the nation's capital. So 68 forts, whether they were earthwork or masonry, there were 68 forts defending Washington, D.C. And I don't know, are some of them left over from something else? Like, was this modernity era that the Civil War seems to have been an end to, different than we're understanding? Like, and was there a necessity to like cull so many people? Were they rolling out like a new model? It's interesting. I mean, at this point in time, guys, across the ocean, they have everybody numbered, like numbered and accounted for, like as if they all were prisoners of war. And so what was happening around the world at this time? It wasn't just here. Guys, this is everywhere in the world. A huge power struggle. What the heck happened? And the crazy thing is by these numbers and losses and things, it looks like the South was just handing it to the North, but the North had double the people, which is, the ultimate downfall. But dude, the South was handing it to them. Look at the wounded, almost equal, right? The South has less wounded than the North. The North has more battle deaths than the South, more hit in battle than the South. So, like, dude, they were giving it to them. And that's, including, I'm sure there were some slaves and stuff, but maybe these slaves were very skilled in working on the side of the South, and we're just told they were working for the North or like something. You know what I mean? There was some crazy different thing going on here. Maybe slavery was different back in the day. I know that like there were things called indentured servants, and pretty much all of like the lower class people would work for a portion of their life and then they would be freed. Like they would like work for 15 or 20 years and then they would be freed, and they would start working like really young, and then when they were free they had to figure out ways to survive on their own and everything, and things were set up a little bit differently, a lot differently than they are today. But so those are just some of the numbers, guys, but like I want to dig into some of these pictures, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of crazy. We've got a lot of this kind of stuff. We're just lined up. Yep. All right. They're lined up with their weird Fez style things, with like little sort, like, dude, they look a lot. They look kind of Eastern. Everybody's rocking a nice mustache, you know? It's interesting. These plantation houses are everywhere. They're all just camped out outside of these massive plantation houses. Like they got these giant chimneys or pieces of chimney and stuff, and then they have like a log cabin. So like where'd the rest of it go? Or they just built the chimney, maybe. Who knows? Deck of cards made its appearance when two or more Yanks got together. Didn't matter that God was angry. We just play cards. But I shown this in the last video. Look at this building back here, Nashville. What was going on in the world? And we're gonna get into, and this is interesting, guys. Like this is a wooden cathedral that they built. And something, after much research and mulling it over mentally, thinking about the way technology builds up in secret and is only given to the masses after like control is established. I think that they had radio, guys. They had air telegraph or radio or something, not just telegraph lines, but like maybe they could transmit over a shortwave or something like that. And that these cathedrals, why would you build a spire like this out of wood unless like you had something going on? It just doesn't make too much sense. There's not going to be a bell hanging in here, obviously, but like what's up with that? Is it just like for fun, or is it a technology maybe? And we see proof later of like different types of towers. But like New York Herald newspaper, they roll up in their wagon, hang out. So like, was this all just for the sake of like a lot of people think like it was all just culling, like every war has just been culling people. But like look at this advanced technology. You may not think that this is advanced, but this is highly, highly advanced. These ironclads, dude, massive iron steamships, so many different types. Really signifies a very still water, if you ask me. But like what was going on to they're like armor up all of our paddle wheels. Some advanced stuff, some submarines. They had multi-person submarines by the end of the war. Look at this. They this thing only had its little stack showing when it was under the water. Torpedo boat, you just launched little torpedoes. How crazy and cool. Now, here's where it gets kind of interesting too when we look at their outfits, you know, looking like a combination conquistador, uh I don't know, like Italian cowboy style. It's interesting, right? To say the least. Now, we get further along. This is the normal one we're used to seeing, the private US infantry one. So we get further on and we have these Zouaves. Okay. And it says that they're from like uh they're French from North Africa. They're like what do you call it? Mercenaries or something like that. But you go down and look at the Confederate side, and they're also on the Confederate side. So, like, what was going on here? It's the same guy, dude. Like, what are these dudes doing? So it's weird, like it's totally weird. And then of course they don't show the Zouave for the Confederacy down in like the descriptive, but they're here. They call one of them is called a Louisiana Tiger. Okay, so clearly there were like a people, a Turkic, sort of old school as heck people here, and during before the Civil War. Now, like someone asked like where do they go and stuff like, but then you look at like the emergence on the west coast of like Turkic uh culture. It's there, and it started right after this. Like it started like in the late 1800s, and there was so much going on, supposedly gold rush, etc. 1849, just prior to this, and then suddenly like everything was a war. But supposedly the Civil War was like a Cold War beforehand. Like there was this tension, there must have been this division, and I wonder if that division wasn't different than we're told, and maybe had something to do with like the old ways and the new ways you know and some of those that wanted the old ways to not be governed by like this Club of Rome thing, uh held their ground, and they fought hard. They must have to have these numbers like we were looking at earlier, to like dominate for the most part with half the people. Dude, they wanted it. They wanted to get what they had going done, you know? And like all this infrastructure probably was in place before the war, all this rail stuff. I'm sure, yeah, a lot of the boats were sail, because it was convenient, and they were probably trading with themselves a lot along the East Coast, especially. you know we really only need things from somewhere else in America, and there's ways to get that. But anyway, like here's some more of the weaponry and stuff. This is like what we're shown, like some regular artillery, um which is decent, but like then we see like this massive like steampunk crazy style stuff, you know like, and if this can be built, dude, imagine what else can be built. Like this is a massive like war engine, like these mortars that shot exploding shells. so effectively destroying like all forts. So like this war went around like the southern part and the northern part of America and just destroyed old infrastructure. Supposedly they were like holding up and using these like wicker baskets for masonry and defense works. I don't know about that. I mean, maybe from bullets, but it's not going to help too much from an exploding mortar from overhead. Telegraph Corps strung more than 15,000 miles of wire in the war. 1 year, 1.8 million messages a year. Dude, they were sending massive amounts of data through their like telegraph things. But was some of it wireless, dude? You know what I mean? I really wonder. And here's kind of part of the reason why this is supposedly a flagging tower. Dude, I don't know, man. Like, I seriously feel like this was a massive battle for like resources is always a big thing. Were these like abandoned oil derricks out there? You know what I mean, guys? Like, come on, there's more to it than just, oh, we can't have, you can't have, slaves. Like, because ultimately, like, slavery became the thing. Like, we're still in a form of slavery, like that didn't change. So like who really won? What really happened? And like I know some of this is out there for people, but listen, if they have, what are these things producing what they need for balloons, guys? Like, dude, come on. If they had the means for all this is high tech shit. Mobile generators inflating these things has to be with lighter than air gas, guys. What are these mobile helium or hydrogen generators? And if they, here's the thing, if they can generate hydrogen, dude, they know so much more. There's so much we're not being told if they're able to just roll around generating hydrogen everywhere. That means they probably had hydrogen motors. This is what this war was about, guys. It was like, yes, it was about freedom, but like, dude, all of ours, and dude, we lost. We lost. Like, and there were black and white people on both sides, and that's clear. This was about more than just like black and white, a lot more. And it was a lot about photo opportunities. You know what I mean? And like it being documented the way it is definitely puts a certain spin. You know, they turn things into hospital ships. These were like crazy Wild West gambler places. There were prisons everywhere. And you know what? They made this is like when you see prisoners like breaking rocks. So they made these prisoners do things. Some burials, man, brutal. So it's brutal too. Super brutal stuff. But here we go. Look at this, dude. Richmond in 1865. Like, what do you think demolished the city to this extent? Do you think it was just all artillery? Or do you think there was some aerial bombardment going on? I think it was like all of the above. But this is like the way the new was ushered in. And yes, the new sucks, right? Like the new square little blah blah blah. The only great, brilliant like architecture is state houses and things and these rich people's mansions. Dude, that was by design. That's what all of this is about. All of this demolition of everything was like, listen, the regular people can't have that. And like that's one thing I kind of agree with like the whole Tartaria movement is this destruction, this wholesale destruction of everything was like planned and is still going on. Like it's unfortunate that it's like lumped into this crazy movement that wants to believe in like utopiast ideals and like some weird uh also like direction from like Russian uh, propaganda. Like, dude, who knows, right? But like take what you can and realize that something happened. We're not going to get the legit story out of anybody, but we can kind of decipher that it was time for all of this to change. Like South Carolina, look at these places, guys. And it kind of ties into the argument that there were a larger people, and maybe that was just a different era. We see what happened after these times, that whole crazy progressionist ideal, art deco movement that came like 20, 30 years after this, like that futuristic, you know, but also carried with it, unfortunately, like many people being locked into insane asylums. And like those people that were locked into those asylums, they were the victims of this. They were the victims of this, guys. They were the ones who lived through this. You wonder why they needed institutionalizing. Look at this. How destroyed would you be if your entire world was rocked? For what? To use up all that ammunition they've been storing for years and years? To lock up all the people that disagree with whatever was being pushed? Look at this, guys. Medicine was a contraband of war. So after all of this, whoever survived needed those lavish institutions, didn't they? It's brutal. Super brutal, guys. And then there was the surrender. It was more like a stalemate, or they just knew they couldn't win, or they were like given something, you know, they were probably like negotiated with. Hmm. Grand review. Welcome back, boys. Huh. They're all wearing their little hats, aren't they? So, yeah, it goes on and on, guys. And there's a lot. They've got all the stats. Who knows, like, what crazy numerical shenanigans and fun is going on there? But statement of the number of engagements, one in New York. Look at this, guys. Some in Ohio, even. So, like, is there a possibility that they were like California had some engagements? Did you see what I'm saying, guys? These these engagements were like specifically planned out in certain places to create a history for somewhere. It's like, look over here, Look over here, guys. Look over here. Look over here at these places that were all Civil War battlegrounds, but don't look at the place 30 miles to the north where it's like the real treasure, you know? That's just my opinion on all this. It's like the look over here thing. When you got a handbook, you know, hereby, I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, President of the United States of America, do hereby invite all of our people of our country to take direct and active part in the centennial of the Civil War. Okay? Like, come on, dude. Have you seen what happens when like the president like issues something like this? It was America. I'm sure it was America's most tragic experience. That part I don't think is a joke. But like, how did it really, what was the side of the people that lost? Because that's what the story we're missing. And it seems to have been like a great nation that was annihilated. I don't think it's as simple as black and white as black and white, you know? And but you see this continued demolition of places much like this even afterward, all the way to like the San Francisco 1906 earthquake. You see the same type of devastation. So I mean, these pictures could be interchangeable, really. They really could, but you see like the heavy duty masonry that is holding a lot of things up. But I talk about reclamation and all that stuff, and for somebody to take over and like do this to an entire country, they're just reclaiming their what they now consider like their land, and then so they level everything, and they don't care if it's a parking lot or what. Like as long as the stuff that remembers the conquered is gone. So whatever the old world was, that was conquered. Definitely conquered. Well, that's all I got here for this video, and thank you all for tuning in. And that was just, just my rant on like the Civil War, this handbook that I came across. Kind of interesting stuff. So go check into it yourself, guys. Let us know what you think. Let other people know what you think. Let's try to get this figured out and understand like the whole dynamic behind this. And I feel like more of us out there giving this a thought, the more of us can get this done. And I know I'm gonna run into like uh disagreement with some people that are like eyeballs deep in Civil War like all the time and are so in it that they can't see like the very personal kind of stories, like the what is it to brood this from a Cold War to the Civil War, like the bloodiest ever on American soil. What happened? What was that? What was going on? We know there was like this crazy shift in technology happening, but like what did it really look like what is all being hidden? And I definitely feel like, and this is wild for some people to think, but I feel like airships is a big one. Why all the vanilla skies? And if you had like airship type dominance, you could take over everything, right? Couldn't you? If you dominated the sky, you know? So that's just a thought. Maybe just the winners were the ones that dominated the sky eventually. We see evidence here of like those helium generators or hydrogen generators, like mobile ones. Crazy, dude. I never knew that. But that's just some of the stuff that you see. And that's in the mainstream. That's in what we get from school and everything. So, anyway, I want to thank you all for tuning in and letting me rant and get all that out of my head. So, have a great rest of your day, and I hope this information finds you well.